well, okay, you're done.
Yeah.
It's actually better to sit out an entire season as the F2 champion rather than go and prejudice that
especially
win.
a season like the season Felipe Drugovich has had. But he was one of the more experienced drivers in the field, and some great rookie challenges. Drivers like Théo Pourchaire giving him a real run for his money at certain events throughout the year, but really experience and class showed for Felipe Drugovich, and he's been very, very fast in a virtual racing car as well throughout the 24 hours. And I know that Redline think extremely highly of him, as everybody, of course, in feeder series racing does. Out into the lead of the race in that number 2 car, and we'll see what he's able to do. He's being pursued by the 36 Alpine, which still has L'Atelier behind the wheel of it. Interval only 14 seconds as it stands.
We had one driver change on the last stop in Team Redline, and that was Felipe Drugovich taking over the number 2 car. Max Verstappen stayed in number 1. We had one driver change at Porsche Coanda, driver change in the 23 car that is in 5th place on this outlap, and Bastien Bus, the Super Cup driver, is driving that. He is currently in 5th place, and Mitchell de Jong stayed in the 20 car, which is in 6th. And these are the 2 cars that you're looking at. We ride with the busy hands of Mitchell de Jong, and right in front is Bastien Bus.
Yeah, liberal use of steering lock. That's definitely not on ration, is it?
No.
As they get down to Mulsanne corner, seems to be the way to get the car to turn in the mid-corner. Obviously, you're going at pretty slow speed. You're not developing massive amounts of tyre temperature in the tyre. Obviously, in its model, quite resistant. Look at this then. The battle continuing on between these two teammates.
One of the reasons that the lap times have been trimmed this year is not just familiarity with the machinery, but the new generation of Goodyear tyre. Goodyear have worked very closely with our Factor 2, and that is a team formation position change. Mitchell de Jong being waved by Bastien Bus, so he will take up the running for Porsche Coanda. He moves up into... No, it's the other way around. Bastien Bus came out behind, didn't he? So it's Bastien Bus who's been waved ahead. So the professional race driver, Bastien Bus and Maurice Schuring, his teammate, his pro teammate in that car, both race in the Porsche Mobil 1 Super Cup in the real world. They have been waved in front of the pro sim racer to set the pace. That's quite the indication of how fast some of these racing drivers really are in these cars.
Yeah, it's a case of whatever works, whoever is doing the job. And of course, you don't know which of the cars, they may have subtly different setups at this stage of the race. Yeah. You never know which of the cars is going to be performing and who's performed over the last hour, Martin.
We have 7 hours remaining at Le Mans. We are 19, that's not quite right, is it? 16, 17 hours in. No. And daylight has arrived at the Circuit de la Sun, and with it, the low sun brings its own challenges. Had an entertaining battle in the GTE cars with the Sim Maranello Ferrari and the Project One Porsche battling just outside the podium positions. And then drama as Max Verstappen returned to the fray, having completed one stint in his second. The car had a couple of related disconnects, and he has, it seems, lost a lap to the leaders and as well as the lead. So he is down at the tail of the cars that are in one lap behind the leaders, and that could be a major problem. Little mistake there, driving error for the BS competition BMW. That car in second place in the hands of Philippe Denis. And then Max Verstappen returning to the pit lane for a second time. Stays in the car, but there's a lot of real estate between them and the leader, which is the sister number 2 car from Team Redline. Their rivals for Porsche Coanda, Bastien Bus and Mitchell de Jong. Bastien Bus just taking over the car. They lie outside the top 4 because Alpine are in second place and AMG Team Williams ahead of AMG Team Petronas. The 53 and the 63 cars are in 3rd and 4th. So getting back to racing action, Team Redline versus ARC Bratislava. And that was a pretty straightforward pass. The ARC Bratislava car is currently Matto Homola just out of the pits. And that car is down in 19th place. That is more than 2 laps behind the leader. And so the Redline car there, is that 2 or 1 that just went by him?
It's
hard to tell the difference.
Oh,
it's not. It's the GR car,
I think it's the GR
so
car.
That was a pass for position. Matto Homola on the outlap from the pits, heavy with fuel and not up to speed. And the GR car went by him.
Yeah, Ritson in the 86. It's a car we saw in various strife at right at the start of the race, if you recall, with issues and spins and bumps.
Got clattered off by the Pescarolo car, and then had the Arnage car rather, then had a spin all of its own right ahead of the Arnage car after the first restart. So it's had a couple of off-track excursions. So Mohan Ritson is the man at the wheel, but you know, when you are up to speed and your tyres are hot, a car on the outlap is easy pickings, isn't it?
Well, you're also
easier
as the car on your outlap. You're also trying to not damage the tyre as you're getting it up to speed. It's cruel in many ways. That the most dangerous moment from a stint in terms of damaging the car, in terms of damaging the tyre, in terms of using too much fuel, is always that first 1 or 2 laps out of the pits, because it's when the car is heaviest and does its most damage to the tyre as a result. So you go straight in and potentially cause yourself an issue.
Matto Homola sends it up the inside. So he did exactly as he said on the outlap. He didn't fight it. He brought the tyre in, and then the moment he felt it under him, straight back in front of the GR car.
Yeah, made the move. And a tricky one to do that down into the Dunlop chicane. You're braking under load. It is actually a shorter distance, of course, because of the radius of that right-hander to then beeline straight for the second apex there. But I don't know, somehow you're never quite as far down the inside as you thought.
Or as you would like to be. No, I can imagine that exactly being the case. On board with 86. This is Mohan Ritson, the GR sport car, and just ahead of them, having just passed him again, is the ARC Bratislava car, Matto Homola. Matto Homola, a touring car driver by trade. And of course, not all of our pro race drivers are even sports car drivers of any kind. I mean, clearly Max Verstappen doesn't race sports cars, nor does Felipe Drugovich, not in the real world. But a number of them come from GT racing and prototype racing, the pro racing drivers in the field. But Matto Homola, very much a touring car man.
Mohan Ritson, no exception. British GT Championship in the GT4 class for 2022. 2021, it was British GT Cup. So another GT3 famed competitor.
Yep.
And back with the 71, then the Redline BMW. And still Rudy Van Buren. I tell you what, I hope somebody's giving some pit stop bars to Rudy Van Buren, because he seems to be, every time I look at that car, Van Buren seems to be behind the wheel of it.
I hope he's got an espresso machine handily sitting by, so he can just top up with caffeine as well.
Mainlined with a...
I have to say, I had one at about 2:30 before I came back on air. I'm definitely feeling the need for a little bit of coffee now. Got that sandy eyes feeling.
It's one of your 5 before 9 AM, is it, Martin?
Yeah, Rudy Van Buren for BMW Team Redline is in 4th place. And we talked about this earlier in the race. Right from the beginning, they only have one strategy. They have a handy lead in the points, and their only strategy is don't hit things, don't spend unnecessary time in the pit lane. Now, where he is right now is, to quote the great James Hunt, up the chuff, almost, of the Oracle Red Bull car, and that is 3rd place. And also, and critically here, Oracle Red Bull are their closest championship rivals. Now, when the 71 car was part of that last little groupette disconnect, they lost almost an entire lap, and they dropped down to 14th place, and at that stage, they lost the championship, or they would lose the championship if nothing changed. They got back the lost lap from race control, and so they are now back in the fray, and so they still have one hand on the title. But as we know from Le Mans history, Alex, one hand is not enough.
Well, in theory, all Van Buren has to do is get his no more nails out and glue his splitter to the rear wing of that Porsche and continue on through the last 6 hours and 51 minutes of this race. 2 caveats to that. Firstly, this is Le Mans Virtual, and what he's staring at ahead of him is a podium finishing position in Le Mans Virtual. Secondly, you always take the biggest gap you can possibly take, call it insurance, against all of those things, against potential little bits of damage, against being held up by traffic, long fuel stops, whatever it is, whatever the danger is, just saying, I'm going to follow this guy for the rest of the race as the 2 red lines from the different classes.
That's the race leader, Felipe Drugovich, going by him. And again, there will be communication. Whether they're even in the same building or not is neither here nor there. There will be communication. His engineer, the BMW driver's engineer, Rudy Van Buren's engineer, will be saying, car coming up behind you is your teammate. Let him through as quickly as you can, please. And Rudy will have done that. And at the moment, again, you know, 7 hours to go. That's 7 hours to go. That's an awful lot of endurance racing. That is more than a standard WEC race distance.
Oh, definitely.
That's a lot of racing, and they are at the moment, what, 3 seconds off the podium. Obviously, in the ideal world, they'll win the title and win Le Mans. But we've still got 7 hours and 50 minutes to sort that out. So, you know, when we're within 2 hours of the finish and we're thinking about, are we going to bet the whole house on trying to get victory or a podium, then it becomes more of a realistic thing. Right now, stick to your fuel numbers, do the miles, do the laps. Don't come in early.
And this is the stage of the race where, I mean, you do have that full endurance race to go. But it's the stage of the race where people start to get tired and do silly things. And it's the stage of the race where it's so easy for those ahead of you, those you're moving past in terms of traffic, to do more and more unpredictable things. There are tolerances that need to be applied on both ends. The traffic that you're passing are a little bit tired, and you are also more tired than you're giving yourself credit for. So you need to allow yourself just that little bit of wiggle room to misjudge it slightly. It's a very strange thing. You're almost playing your, controlling yourself and recognizing the limitations of your judgment. And there's a reason that highway codes or equivalent all over the world say, don't drive tired.
Or drunk, or impaired in any way. No, exactly right.
Well,
it
is equivalent in many ways. And so you need to make those allowances. You obviously sleep as best you can throughout the race, keep yourself hydrated, give yourself the best possible chance. But there is nothing that is going to make up for pure lack of sleep. But when you go charging down the inside of something in the braking zone, there has to be that tolerance to the fact you are both getting towards the limits of your concentration.
And also, the car is getting fatigued. Now, less so on this platform than in real life. The car will be less worn out in the virtual world than it will be in the real world, and you'll be nursing fewer, maybe slight little niggles. But again, like you talked about, you don't give yourself credit for it, but actually that's part of what you do all the time as a racing driver, like any other athlete. It is a constant re-evaluation and self-appraisals going on all the time, not just in your overall career, not just in what you're doing this season, not just in what you're doing this weekend, but in what you're doing every minute of every lap in the car. You're constantly reappraising the car's abilities and your own versus those of the guys you're competing with.
Well, it was so interesting talking to some of the team here at Motorsport Games about the stint lengths of the various LMP cars as they moved through the race. I asked the guys here if the red line was still going one long. They looked at me blank-faced and said, Why wouldn't they be?
Yeah.
Of course, I'm so used to the collectors not working quite as well as we move through the race. Cars gather a little bit of drag sometimes. You see the fuel numbers creep skywards, and so often a car that was able to do 1 lap more than the rest of the field at the beginning of the race is then not as the race goes on. Of course, here, if you have got that fuel mileage, you've got it. It's in the suitcase, and you can carry it for the whole race.
And some drivers can do it better, are just better predisposed to saving that fuel. So let's say that the red line BMW here went a lap longer in the first stint. Now, the same driver remains in. Can he add another lap longer in the second stint, which again gives them a 2-lap advantage? Now, if you can continue to do that, even if it's only with one of your drivers, a quarter of the race, you will be adding a lap to your stint on each stint. You won't suddenly go from 14 laps to 15 to 16, 17 to 18, but if you're constantly doing 16 and your nearest rival is only doing 15, every time you stop, you save yourself time in the pits. Not then, but cumulatively, you will get to the stage where you've saved enough of those laps that you don't have to make a pit stop when they do.
Well, you gain a stint every 10 laps.
Yeah. Well, you do it, in LMP or every 15 or whatever it is in GTE. So once an hour in GTE, you will gain, or no, once every 15 hours in GTE, so once in the race, you will gain 2 minutes.
Still with this battle, Van Buren versus Conright, Oracle Red Bull versus the another 71 Team Red Line. The battle on track, the battle for the championship through this year in GT Honours. Will Van Buren risk a move at the moment in that BMW? It's looked so nicely balanced, that car, throughout the race.
Yeah, it really does.
They just look at. He just doesn't need that extra little bit of track. Looks stable on the throttle pedal.
Now, I was about to say he's doing the sensible thing, which is hoovering himself into the toe of the Porsche and allowing the Porsche to do all the work, saving himself a bit of fuel and also costing Jaden Conright in the Porsche a bit of fuel. And then suddenly, between the two chicanes, from pretty much out of nowhere, bang, there's a move. And for the last 5 or 6 laps, he's been there, close enough. And I thought maybe sitting back just enough to keep the temperatures under control and not overwork the tyres. And then on the last lap, he's closed right in through the Porsche curves. And then you get out of Tertre Rouge and suddenly he's made the move and he's now up to 3rd place.
Conright thinks better of a go back at him down to Mulsanne corner. So often been in that scenario where you're happy where you are, you'll continue through the race, but if they put a move on the platter for you, you get a nice little toe, you'll take it. And sometimes it's actually safer to make that move and get out in the lead and try and move away, or get out in front of whatever car it is you're racing and try and move away, than it is to have to judge your braking points. Than get less air through the rads, than have to deal with the traffic as a duo, trying to make it through. It adds so much opportunity for error to get that move done, to get out and into some nice clear air and move forward. I think you're absolutely right. It allows you to drive your own race at your own pace, and actually in the end, that is by far the best for yourself and for the car. A couple of pit stops, BS competition, they've had a stop, and Bruno Spengler is back with that car. I've not actually mentioned his name. The multiple DTM champion and now electric touring car racer Bruno Spengler. And then Sim Marinello, they've just made a stop as well. Driver change there too. And who else just stopped? Simsa Esports and Satellite. So David Pittard in at Satellite. In the Simsa Esports car, again, Ramez Azam, first time I've talked about him during the race. In at Sim Marinello is Andrea Terzi. Haven't
mentioned his name either so far in any of my stints. And I haven't talked about Bruno Spengler racing. So our stars align, all of those 4 drivers freshly into the cars after their pit stops, and they coincide with one of my stints as well. Erhan Yayovski leads for R8G, the 888 Ferrari that led early on. Rudy Van Buren second for BMW Team Redline. And when the last time those 2 cars were in the top 2 ahead of the then 3rd and 4th place Proton Coanda Porsches, they both had a disconnect and dropped right back there, back up there. Oracle Red Bull now in 3rd, Project One up to 4th. BS Competitions BMW Bruno Spengler in 5th, and the only remaining Proton Coanda car, Alexander Tauscher, is at the wheel of the 88 car, and that is in 6th position. So that's where we are with the GTE category. You can see further back, there's the Proton Coanda car at the top of the timing screen pylon. Then Sim Maranello, ProDrive Fire of the Aston Martin, SF and Simsa the Ferraris. This Ferrari not as competitive as I'd really hoped it would be here at Le Mans. The balance of power, a balance of performance doesn't quite seem to have given them what they needed in the race compared to how they've been in the shorter sprint races. That's a bit of a disappointment, I'm sure, for all the Ferrari teams and all the Ferrari fans, as well as the Ferrari drivers. But you know, that's...
Well, apart from the R8G team, who are making that
apart
Ferrari
from the car
work.
that's leading the race, yeah, the Ferraris aren't looking very competitive. Thank you very much, Alex Brundle. that was, well, actually, Murray, and that's exactly why we have competent racing driver professionals with us.
Well, I was about to note that was the exception that proves the rule that you were aptly explaining.
No, that highlights a very good point. What is it that R8G are doing with the same toolbox?
No, it is very
What is it that they're doing that SF, hello, Scuderia Ferrari, what is it that they can't do with a car? What is it that Sims have been competitive during the season? Sim Maranello have had good runs. What are they not able to do? And is it just mileage? Is it lap speed? Is driver lineup? What is it about R8G that is better?
They seem to have nailed it, don't they, in terms of setup with that car. Yeah. I've not seen one particular driver take off into the distance in that R8G car. They've all been there or thereabouts, haven't they? Yeah. I mean, you've got Jajovski behind the wheel right now. He's a driver that's been bouncing across esports categories, done a couple of Le Mans 24-hour virtuals. Best positioning is 3rd in GTE, finished 6th last year in the R8G esports LMP. GT Pro champion in 2020. But
it is a phenomenally strong driver lineup.
It is very strong.
It really is. Yeah, the pro sim racers, Erhan Yayovski and Timotej Andonovski, the 2 Macedonian drivers. There is the Scuderia Ferrari car.
Ollie Behrman in the pits.
Yeah, they're enormously quick, and no question, Alexander Smolyar. I mean, I know that Lewis probably thinks that Smolyar is the single best pro driver in the GT field. So yeah, 51, a brief disconnect and into the pit lane. And where were they? Oliver Behrman was in 10th place. Now, normally in a pit stop, big moment for the satellite Aston there, carrying just a little too much speed and giving himself a bit of a wake-up call.
It's conforming to delivery there, wasn't it? Through the mid-corner of chicane 2. Smolyar, I mean, he's a serial Formula 3 competitor. A couple of seasons with ART, season with MP Motorsport, and he's always in the hunt.
Not back at the grid teams either, so yeah.
No, he's always in the hunt in a Formula 3 car, and it's great to see him out there. I didn't know, I must admit, that he was so prolific in virtual racing, having watched him race, of course, in the Formula 3 Championship over a couple of seasons. But
well, because that never comes in their biogs, does it? You know, yeah, the few drivers or teams that actually produce driver biogs and actually manage to get them out to
likes pineapple on pizza and has a dog called Charlie.
Yeah,
you know,
you get that, but you don't. Yeah, they don't mention that he's a three-time world something or other champion or a Formula this, that, and the other frontrunner or whatever. No, well, that's not relevant, is that? That's just messing around on computer games.
Quite.
Yeah.
But,
although of course the first thing that they want to do is get him to the factory to mess around on their computer game so that he can start to dial the car in with the engineers. And yet still there is that sort of real world, or has been probably up until lockdown, that real world poo-pooing of, if it's not a sim rig in your factory, then you're just playing a game. Well, if it's a sim rig in your factory, then it's a de facto bit of work.
Well, obviously using R Factor 2 as the basis for the simulation here, and almost all of the mid-range race teams I've driven for have an R Factor based simulation. Yep. In the workshop. Is this R Factor will be normally the first question that you ask when you jump on a team simulator. Yep. So the Forest S's as he pushes on. But yeah, I mean, this simulation, fundamental to motorsport. You know, when you all meet and have a run on the simulator to get prepared for the next event.
Well, Drugovic still with the lead of the race, and with one pit stop fewer than almost anybody in the class, which is quite interesting. They've stopped 23 times. MG Team Petronas in second place, 24 stops. Porsche Coanda 25, one of which at least I'm sure will be a disconnect. 24 stops for the 23 car, 25 for the fifth place Alpine, including the one that they have just completed. 26 for AMG Team Williams, Nikodem Wisniewski just leaving the pit lane for them. Who else done 23 stops for the car? That is in seventh, Yashit Veloce. So they have been parsimonious on the fuel. Who else has done 23 stops? R8G's number 18 car. And there, I did see one more. Yeah, GR, unbelievably, despite all the times they've been shunted and biffed and bashed, have only done 23 stops. So
they've just been quite long ones.
No, well, not necessarily. They have lost more time maybe, but yeah, none of them have been seemingly unforced errors, because if the race leader, and I don't remember a time where he's been forced into the pits out of sequence, the race leading number 2 has only done 23 stops, then GR, despite their travails, have done a pretty decent job with their fuel as well.
Race leader, R8G, in the 888 Ferrari have been in and out and maintained the lead. Van Buren moved away to the tune. We saw that move just a little while back in the BMW Team Redline 71. Has managed to find 3 or so seconds over Conright in the Oracle Red Bull Racing Porsche. So the one that we have center screen right now. So that's a decent amount of pace for Van Buren, and we talked about him wanting his own space to drive his own race. Yep. And he's found a little bit of a buffer for that car. Exactly what he'll want to do. He's 45 seconds back now from that R8G car that's just completed its stop. That's on 16 stops to the BMW's 14. So it could be. Well, I'm interested to know whether the BMW owes a stop to the R8G.
I think the BMW has been stretching the fuel mileage better than anything else, and we've seen that through the course of the Le Mans Series Virtual during the year. Timotej Andonovski just taking over from Erhan Yayovski, so from one Macedonian to another, and Timotej Andonovski in R8G's lead car. And as you said, yeah, the gap has come down. And yes, Rudy Van Buren in the BMW Team Redline car will stop again before the R8G Ferrari has to. But there is the R8G Ferrari. That is the race leader. Sort of dark blue and red livery on the car.
Yeah.
And Romain Grosjean, of course, racing in his own team's LMP cars. So we saw him online a little bit earlier on in the early hours of the morning where he is in the US. And into the pit, Bonahus for AMG Team Petronas in from second place. Now, he only had a minute over Mitchell de Jong in the better of the two Porsche Coanda cars, and so he may lose second place during the stop unless the Porsches come in now, and I have a feeling they might need to.
Interestingly, he's in kind of locked in a battle with that AMG Team Williams car.
Yeah.
That he may well come out close-ish to. You'd think that would be a kind of a teammate friendly fire situation, but they're run from completely, although their teams are very similarly named, they're run from completely different places by completely different people.
Yeah.
Those two teams, they're in no way a team together beyond the connection associated to AMG. AMG, of course, involved as a partner engine supplier to Williams in Formula One, and of course supplying high-performance powertrains to the Mercedes F1 team over in Brackley. So that's the connection with AMG. Beyond that, Williams eSports a thing, Petronas eSports a thing, and very much a different battle, and it will be Bonahus who comes out of the pits at 5 seconds behind Wisniewski, who's currently in the 53 car as we speak.
And you're absolutely right, and it's a little bit like Red Bull drivers in junior categories being run by different teams. Yeah, the money's coming from the same place. No, they're not teammates. In fact, radically, dramatically and diametrically the opposite. They are each other's deadliest enemy.
Well, even the teammates aren't really teammates, are they? They are there for their opportunity to try and show the world what they can do. Ramon Pinheiro, a name I haven't heard for a very long time in a racing car.
He's been in the Fordzilla car for some while, actually.
Great to see Ramon back on a racetrack, virtual or otherwise. Motorsport Vision, MSB Formula 2 competitor, a former Palmer Audi competitor, I believe. Did a little GT racing as well. Used to be managed by Martin Donnelly, Ramon Pinheiro.
Wow.
Guided through his career. The gentle hand of Martin Donnelly, letting him know where he needed to be and when.
I do love Martin Donnelly. I understand quite a lot of what he says quite often. And not very much quite often as well.
You can always, and I'm sure Martin won't mind me saying, if he ever scares you, you can always run away.
There is that. Leader in the pits, Felipe Drugovich makes his pit stop. AMG Petronas, Jas Heat, Floyd Van Burst are all in and out. Brabham are in. Panis, R8G's number 18 car, and Team Redline, Max Verstappen in as well. Dan Brewer in GR's eSports car, and the Axel Motorsport car of Alistair Young, as well as the Graf car, all in the pit lane, and that's Jas Heat Veloce. Now, they were shown as on their outlap, so have they had a glitch there as well? Well, there is the Fordzilla car of Ramon Pinheiro, of whom we were just talking, and that was a battle for position he was in. No, it wasn't. That wasn't the Panis car ahead of him. That was one of the AMG, either AMG Team Williams or AMG. I think it was AMG Team Williams car, wasn't it? Was that Nikodem Wisniewski? I think so.
Yeah, he's pursuing the Formula 3 Championship winner Victor Martins in the Alpine eSports 37, and is 9/10 of a second back. So that will be the
so
Alpine.
In fact, that is the Alpine, yeah. So it's not the Signatec Alpine livery. It is a variety of, which is what confuses me, because it looks a bit more like an AMG Williamsy kind of thing. Again, still, you know, 18 hours in, we'll still be, or I will still be confusing some cars for other cars, because there are too many that have the same damn livery. Or a very close variety of.
Well, they don't have the same line. They might have the same livery. They don't have the same line through Techerou's. Pinheiro missed the apex and had to scoop it right up on the way in there. And he is in pursuit. Let's see how he's getting on in terms of pace. Well, they were both a little slower last time around than they might otherwise have been, probably moving through a little bit of traffic. So I don't know if Pinheiro is going to be able to make any kind of impression. He does appear to be visually catching Victor Martins as they pass the D-Station Aston Martin. We ride on board.
D-Station had another problem. At the end of the darkness hours, the driver lost his screen and as a result had to quit back into the garage, but had a big off at Indianapolis and then had to do a very slow lap with half a litre of fuel, getting, not for the entire lap, but getting back towards the pit lane. The team came on, or the guys upstairs came on. He was like in the Porsche curves. He's got half a litre of fuel left. He was creeping back. So they were clearly on an in-lap when he had his problems, and then somehow managed to eke out a very, very slow lap to get back. Wow. So, yeah, a really good job to keep the car in the race, but unfortunately, it did sort of set them back a lot.
Missed the pit lane scenario, but you have been there to try to make it back. I mean, sometimes it just straight doesn't work.
Yeah.
Here's a replay of that then, and
well, this is the D-Station onboard, creeping into the pit lane and being really good in the Porsche curves. He waited at the entry to the Porsche curves for, you know, 20 seconds for a big group of cars to come by, cut across the grass. He was offline everywhere, really picking and choosing. And when he came so slowly into the pit lane, actually just went across the grass to allow quicker cars to fly by him into the pits without holding anybody up. So, I mean, a really gentlemanly way of dealing with it. We've just had a big slew of pit stops, got just under 6.5 hours left. Team Redline lead from Alpine Esports, and then AMG Team Williams, AMG Team Petronas. The two Porsche Coanda cars have just stopped. No driver changes there. Mitchell de Jong stays in 20, Bastien Boos stays in 23. And they remain in the top half dozen, but not quite in contact. Max Verstappen remains in the #1 Team Redline car that he took over in the lead and kept in the lead until there was a double disconnect of some kind, an issue with his car that sent him back to the pit lane twice. So that car is now officially down in 16th place. It is a lap off the lead, and if it has any further problems, we'll go a second lap back very quickly indeed.
This is the double Coanda battle. We saw it a bit of formation flying when these two got in. De Jong and Boos behind the wheel of these two, and it's in fact Boos who's come out behind again, isn't it? And is going to make his way past again, or was that the other way around?
That's not that. That's the GR car, and we are looking back from. We're now looking back from R8G, actually.
Same mistake for me. It does look a lot like the Coanda, that GR car, doesn't it? Yeah. No, you're looking at it. Looks like the Via Veloce on the front of that white car.
Well,
so
it should have been. Well, now according to this, there is, according to the timing screen, there is a GR sandwich between the 18 R8G car and the 8 R8G car, but in fact now that's being shown. That is, the timing screen now reflects what's actually going on, which is Yasheet are just in front of GR, and Yasheet on an outlap, but Seppänen hanging on ahead of Castro. So Andre Castro in the GR car. up to speed. He stopped a lap before. And okay, there's the problem. There is a glitch with the Yas heat in the system, because although we can clearly see it is very definitely moving, our timing system shows it to be stopped.
Yeah, so
and
that
it
should
is plainly not.
That should pick up when it passes the start-finish line this time.
Yeah.
I would imagine, and Seppinen will rejoin the. At maximum and all of the qualifying modes flat out is 322.3, and that's for car 22.
So that was the 22 car, and that was Mika Hakimi who set the time. Hack in this case not meaning Hakkinen, but it definitely Mika Hakimi with the fastest time in the race. Yeah, 322.3, and the Bram car, Aaron Schoenfleet, is at the wheel, the 62 car, and he appears not to have noticed that Happy Hour finished a couple of hours ago. Arne Schoenfleet, so he is the fastest man in the business. RHE's number 8 is in the pit lane. That car currently running in 15th position, and at the moment it is pro race driver Arthur Rougier who is at the helm, and that car also being shared with, no, it's not that car that's being shared with Romain Grosjean, it's 18 that's being shared by Romain Grosjean. So Grosjean, Mathis Poulet, Martin Hemmingsen and Ulas Ozidilium.
It's such a variable period of the race, this. It's sometimes faster than Happy Hour as you move through. Sometimes it tends to depend on the temperature of the next day. Sometimes you just go faster and faster and faster until the end of the race. Sometimes the circuit then slows right back down to how it was almost at the beginning of the race, and you start to struggle for total pace across the entire field. But all bets are off. Once you've passed happy hour, the direction the track is going to go with all of that rubber down and whatever the ambient is, moving into the midday of Sunday, is all bets are off with regards to that, and you never know what you're going to get.
Right now, almost everybody is out on track. Just 2 cars in the pit lane, and that is Mexico Racing Team, and Artur Rouget has now left the pit. So, in fact, only 1 car in the pit lane. So we had the whole field stop in the last couple of laps in LMP, and we are heading towards being due most of our GT runners coming in as well. Timotej Andonovski still leading for R8G in the 888. Bruno Spengler second for BMW, and Lorenzo Colombo is in the BMW team red line car number 71 in 3rd place. So there's a driver change there on the last stop. John Conright in 4th place in the 99 Oracle Red Bull car, ahead of Norbert Kies in Team Project One, and that car lies in 5th place. The second best of the Ferraris is the Sim Maranello car, and that's Andrea Terzi in 6th position at the moment. So that is the best of the rest of the Ferraris, because the R8G Ferrari that leads the race is definitely very much an outlier compared to the performance of any of its sister brand cars.
Another Formula 3 competitor, Lorenzo Colombo, taking over that BMW headline car. Luis Diaz jumping into the Mexico Racing Team car. Indy Lights competitor from 1999 to 2001. 2009 American Le Mans Series LMP2 class champion.
Was he indeed?
A sports car stalwart, really, wasn't he? Over many years. Luis Diaz has done this race before, finished 22nd with that Mexico team in 2020. Last meaningful run in a sport car, 2016 FIA WEC with the Greaves family and Greaves Motorsport. Would that still be in their Zytek?
Yeah, I guess, Tim Greaves and the team, absolutely.
Luis Diaz, see him back behind the wheel as we follow this Ferrari down towards chicane 2. R8G bouncing, they're a little bit off sequence, aren't they, with Spengler, Andonovski in the R8G. A bit off sequence with Spengler behind. They bounce between sort of 45 seconds to a minute and 25 out to that BS competition BMW, but seem to have, he's a second up the road in terms of pace in that 888 car. A very impressive speed still across the driver lineup. Colombo having just jumped behind the wheel of the red line BMW that sits in 3rd position. We'll see what kind of speed he has when he gets up to speed. Well,
Bruno Spengler clearly stung by your criticism. 7/1000ths of a second quicker in Sector 1 than the race leader as he chases in the second time. And BS competition, I mean, you know, a very active team on social media. They got an awful lot of social media presence, as obviously a number do, but that car always, whatever their livery, it always has that zebra stripe, which makes it very easy to identify in a crowd. There's your race leader, Timotej Andonovski for R8G, and a pair of BMWs completing the chasing pack in the podium. Bruno Spengler, Lorenzo Colombo. Lorenzo Colombo also coming into World Endurance this year with Prema. So, and you know, there's the link that brought him in from F3, because Prema leading light in Formula 3, Formula 2 over the years, of, you know, a huge single-seater production line. Yeah, I mean, the only sort of British team in recent years that can compare to that would be somebody like Trevor Carlin's outfit, who have run an awful lot of extremely talented young drivers,
Arden,
predominantly for Red Bull. you know, over the years, particularly in British F3 actually. You know, you've got your Brendan Hartleys and your Danny Ricciardos and your John-Eric Vans and all sorts, you know, Carlos Sainz Jr. and all those guys raced in British F3 with Carlin very successfully. But Prema has been the European equivalent, all sorts of young drivers, and they've had an awful lot of Ferrari development talent through their hands as well. And Lorenzo Colombo is, you know, yet another one of those that has found a very happy berth with Prema, with a roof over his head now as well as without.
Yeah, finding their way into endurance racing in the LMP2 category, been pretty successful in putting a fast car on the track, as was well expected. Been a tougher year for Prema across their, you know, their staple categories. You know, there was a time when if Prema wasn't winning the race in Formula 2 and Formula 3, something had gone horribly wrong. You know, looking back through the 2021 season, incredibly successful. This year, losing out in Formula 2 to MP, losing out to ART in Formula 3. I think, I wonder if they'll question whether too much is being done in the world of endurance racing, or whether they want to make that move full-time. But certainly, and retract, you know, one of their single-seater tentacles, and that's possible. And I sort of, you looked at, like, you know, when WRT came in 2 seasons ago, thought, okay, what did WRT do? Well, they do Audi. What do we know that Audi are doing? They're developing a hypercar. That link was really obvious. What do Prema do? They do single-seaters, and you don't say Prema Ferrari or Prema Lamborghini or Prema Ford or Prema anything. They run single-seater teams, and as far as I'm aware, Tartus don't have a hypercar, I mean, because they're a chassis manufacturer, not a car manufacturer. So you thought, okay, what's the other connection? Why suddenly now? And the most obvious thing that I could think of is Ferrari development driver talent. There is clearly a Ferrari link there. Now, whether they end up as a customer Ferrari hypercar team or whether they are building knowledge for Ferrari's factory team, is that going to be run 100% by AF Corsa as their GT cars are? I mean, you know, that's, or is there some mingling there? Because AF Corsa haven't got top-class hypercar knowledge. Prema had no sports car racing knowledge, so they're doing it in LMP2. But, you know, AF Corsa already have LMP2 knowledge, so that box is already checked. Is there somebody else? Is there another manufacturer? And then you think, okay, what are the other possibilities? Maybe Lamborghini. No, they seem to be accounted for. I mean, Iron Lynx produced one of the big surprises, I think, probably, of the end of the season, going, yep, having raced with Ferrari for many years very successfully, boom, we're now the de facto factory Lamborghini outfit. Wow, talk about ambition there from the Piccini brothers and the rest of the Iron Lynx setup. I mean, that's fantastic. I think Prema coming into the series of, you know, endurance racing series in European Long Series and in the World Endurance Championship, it's they're one of a number of teams who didn't really have a specific program in mind, but hope to be caught in the wealth of general opportunity that there is in sports car racing now, whether it be that they are providing you know, a feeder series structure, providing a driver development structure for a works hypercar outfit, whether they pick up a manufacturer or whatever they're doing. It was worth a go to put themselves in the environment.
Well, you're
to
absolutely
try to
right.
pick
It's
something
like
up.
a lottery ticket. If you don't buy one, you're never going to win it. If you're not visible in that arena, nobody's going to go, right, we've got a sports car racing program. What single-seater team can we get to run it? What they're going to go is, what, you know, what top-class sports car team that aren't already pre-committed, what are we? Who can we get to run it? And so, yeah, but I think, with all the noise and all the clamour of the arrival of the hypercar rules that was happening, you know, sort of 2 years ago at the end of lockdown, they've suddenly gone, oh, hello, and then possibly that balance has been tipped by looking at what WRT did in the first season and going, oh, right, okay, they only run GT3 cars. No, we run proper racing cars. We can definitely do that.
And we all think that our own championships are insurmountably the most competitive, of course. But it is interesting, and I think that when the risk really comes not in whether you enter or whether you don't enter. That's a no-brainer. The risk comes in who you then put in the car. Yeah. So you can enter these championships risk-free. You run 3 drivers who pay their way and might not be necessarily hypercar material, but you're there demonstrating your competence in endurance racing. Or you go for it. You put pro drivers in the car and you invest to try to take home an original equipment manufacturer to fund your racing into the future. And that's where I think risks have been truly taken throughout this lead into the hypercar phase.
Oh, nice little bit of slipstreaming being used by the red line car. And whether you are battling for position or you're looking to lap traffic, still you use every single weapon in the arsenal, don't you? You will tow up behind a slower car to give you even more of a speed advantage, because again, we've talked about this right from the start of the Le Mans Virtual Series. All the cars in the prototype category are the same 07 Orica. They all use the same Gibson engine. They all use the same Goodyear tyre. So every single bit of advantage you can get is bloody hard earned. And to go buy a car that's even 10 laps down, or 20 laps down, or 30 laps down, that's not because it's a slow car, it's because it hasn't had the rub of the green. It could be just as fast.
Well, it's really difficult always to pick up a toe as well in a closed wheel racing car. The biggest element dishing out of the highest kind of coefficient of drag element of a single-seater car beyond, depending on your wing level, is the tyre moving through the air. As soon as you put nice big arches over them and treat the air, you take away the wheel wake, the squish zone out the front, you actually lose a lot of the air that those cars, not only the drag for the car which is moving through the air, but also the tow for the car which is coming behind. So actually you don't get so much of a tow in a closed wheel racing car. And yes, as you say, that can lead to issues on what, when you looked at, as you see, Verstappen trying to make his way past the Veloce on his continued way through. That's the...
He's clinical, isn't he?
Yeah. Trying to make his way back through the field. That's why we see him pulling out of the tow super late. Yeah. He got taking absolutely everything he possibly can out of the car ahead. But you look at Le Mans and you draw it out on a piece of paper and you go, how hard will it be to overtake around that circuit? And everyone would look at you and say, simple. Absolutely simple. You've got braking zones everywhere. In a closed wheel racing car, it can be really tough, spread out by the Porsche curves, and without the tow down those big long straights, you can get nastily caught out.
Yeah, definitely. And Verstappen now fighting his way back towards the top 10 in 13th place. He's gradually picking them off. Gap to the next car in front of him for position is the number 18 R8 GE sports car, and that is 27.5 seconds in front. So that's going to be a long, slow claw, and that will only get them when he gets ahead of Hemmingsen up into 12th position. So it's going to be, once they had that double glitchy disconnect, then that is a massive delay off the lead lap and almost 2 laps back when he rejoined. Now Martin Hemmingsen is his target. He won't see him yet, but he will know just how close he is clicking down
It's going to be pretty quick, because he's actually catching Hemmison a couple of seconds a lap at the moment. So the fight back continues. We haven't heard anything about that #1 red line being given back a lap or any kind of...
I think it was an individual rig issue or an individual problem with them. No other cars were off at the same time. Sasha Lehmann for Alpine Esports and Nikitin Wisniewski, AMG Team Williams in the pit lane. And Next View Vanwall, the 444 car, Josh Skelton brings that in as well. You can just see Lehmann has left for Alpine. And the 53 car, Nikitin Wisniewski, is in there as well. The other thing that may help Verstappen in his chase of Hemmingson in the RHG Esports cars, they're on slightly different fuel stop runs, so it may be that there is a lap between them. Can't remember exactly when, but because he's now not with the lead group with whom they were keeping pace in terms of when they stopped and how they stopped, and is in a group that's nearly 2 laps back and has obviously had a slightly different fortune kind of a race, then they are likely to be a little bit on disparate stop strategies.
So I have the last set of disconnection issues, which was 5:31 Central European time. So that would be 4:31 our time, Greenwich Mean Time. But we've seen those laps that have been given back. The 71 received 2, the 20 received 1, the 23 received 1, the 21 received 2 laps, the 29 received 2 laps, the Ford Zilla car, the 966 received 2, and the